It is Wednesday, the 8th day of November 2023. Hello and welcome to the News International Edition. We're coming to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm Emma Akwero. We start today from Egypt, where the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, met with the Egyptian Foreign Minister as well as the head of the Arab League on the first of the 5-day visit to the Middle East. Turk plans to visit the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt on Wednesday. I'm, of course, from a human rights perspective, extremely worried, he said. Also visiting U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein on Tuesday urged for calm to return to Lebanon's southern border with Israel after weeks of skirmishes following the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, met with Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry as well as the head of the Arab League on the first of a 5-day visit to the Middle East, making known his worry about the situation in Gaza.
It's the 1-month anniversary of this incredible escalation of violence that we have seen. I'm, of course, from a human rights perspective, extremely worried about the situation, about what is happening, and it is really important that a solution is found to end the violence and to get out of this horrible humanitarian and human rights situation for what's happening.
Also visiting U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein on Tuesday urged for calm to return to Lebanon's southern border with Israel after weeks of skirmishes following the start of the Israel-Hamas war. The United States does not want to see conflict in Gaza escalating and expanding into Lebanon, Hochstein told a press conference in Beirut. Restoring calm along the southern border is of utmost importance to the United States, and it should be the highest priority for both Lebanon and Israel, he added. Since Hamas militants launched a shock October 7th attack on Israel from the Gaza Strip, Lebanon's southern border has seen intensifying tit-for-tat exchanges, mainly between Israel and Hezbollah, an ally of the Palestinian group, stoking fears of a broader conflagration. Palestinian militants from both Hamas and the Islamic Jihad have also claimed attacks and infiltration attempts from Lebanon, while Israel has been striking the country's south and sending reconnaissance drones across the border, according to the official national news agency. Since the end of a 2006 conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, the Shiite Muslim group has not had a visible military presence on Lebanon's southern border, which is patrolled by the United Nations peacekeepers. UN Security Council Resolution 1701 ended the 2006 war and called for the removal of weapons in the southern Lebanon from the hands of everyone except the Lebanese army and other state security forces. Since October 7th, the cross-border skirmishes have killed at least 83 people on the Lebanese side, according to a tally, mostly Hezbollah fighters, but also 11 civilians, including a journalist. On the Israeli side, 6 soldiers and 2 civilians have been killed. 3 girls aged 10, 12 and 14 and their grandmother were buried Tuesday, days after the national news agency said an Israeli strike hit their vehicle in South Lebanon. Hamas' attack on southern Israel left 1,400 people dead, mostly civilians, with the group taking more than 240 hostages, according to Israeli authorities. Israel has relentlessly bombed the Gaza Strip since then, killing more than 10,300 mostly civilians, according to the Hamas-run territory's health ministry.
Now in Gaza, bodies have been brought out of Shifa Hospital to be transported away on horse-pulled carts. Israel launched a massive campaign in the Gaza Strip after Hamas militants staged an unprecedented attack on October 7th that killed more than 1,400 people, most of them civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, Israel's relentless bombardment has killed more than 10,300 people. Israel's campaign to destroy Hamas pushed into its second month on Wednesday as its forces battled the Palestinian militants in Gaza City despite mounting calls for a ceasefire. Underlining Israel's plan to crush Hamas, Defense Minister described it as Gaza's largest terrorist base ever built. "We are in the heart of Gaza City," he said. Israel launched a massive campaign in the Gaza Strip after Hamas militants staged an unprecedented attack on October 7th that killed more than 1,400 people. According to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, Israel's relentless bombardment has killed more people. Calls for a halt in the fighting have gone unheeded, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisting there would be no pause until the more than 240 hostages seized by Hamas are freed. United Nations Rights Chief Volker Turk said the past month was marked by carnage of continued suffering, bloodshed, destruction, outrage and despair. In Jerusalem on Tuesday night, sobs, prayers in memorial ceremonies and crowds lit candles while mourning the 1,400 dead, including families slain in their homes and young people killed at a music festival in the worst attack in Israel's history. In densely packed Gaza, where more than 1.5 million people have fled their homes in a desperate search for safety, the suffering is immense. Entire city blocks have been leveled and bodies in white shrouds are piling up outside hospitals where surgeons operate on bloodied floors by the light of phones. The World Health Organization said on an average of 160 children are killed every day in Gaza by the war. Hamas's media office said on Telegram that several cemeteries in Gaza had no more space for burials, while the UN Office for the Coordination of the Humanitarian Affairs said most of the territory's sewage pumping stations were shut. Israel accuses Hamas of building military tunnels underneath hospitals, schools and mosques, charges the militant group denies. Netanyahu has said no fuel will be delivered to besieged Gaza, but many allow possible tactical forces to free hostages and deliver aid. Within Sudan, 4.5 million people have been internally displaced since April when the war began, while 1.2 million have fled to neighboring countries like Chad, Egypt, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Central African Republic, said the UN, as fierce fighting in Darfur once again pushes thousands of Sudanese to flee their homes. More must be done to elevate the suffering of the families already displaced, a UN official reported.
The war between troops loyal to Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the Rapid Support Forces of General Mohamed Hamdan Daglo has left more than 9,000 dead since April, according to a UN report. Of the nearly 6 million who have fled, 1.2 million have left the country, very proud people who find themselves begging and whose lives have been totally disrupted, the UN official said.
Border with Sudan, where the scenes are dramatic. We're seeing over 3,000 people coming on a daily basis for the past 3 days. I'm a few kilometers away from our transit center. The transit center is overwhelmed. It was built for 3,000 people. It now hosts 20,000. The situation is unbearable. Humanitarians are overwhelmed. We are reaching a point where it is undignified for the people of Sudan to be in this situation. The South Sudanese government has opened their borders, have let the people in. We are grateful to them, but now we need the world's support. We need health, we need shelter, we need food, we need water and sanitation, we need protection.
He warned that while the world's attention has been shifted to the war in Gaza, the number of people fleeing their homes in Sudan had started to rise again as RSF forces advanced toward Nyala, the country's second city, in the heart of Darfur. The UN official Dominique Hyde said on social media Thursday she had witnessed traumatic scenes at the border with Sudan.
The situation is dire. We're lacking shelter, we're lacking water, we're lacking food, and all of the UN, the NGO community is coming together, but it's simply not sufficient for the needs. We are so concerned. You're talking about 6 million people that have been displaced, both inside Sudan as well as in all of the neighboring countries, and that because of a conflict that can be stopped. We need a ceasefire, we need a political solution so that these people can go home safely and go back to school, go back to their jobs, and start their life again. This simply cannot continue.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meanwhile said he was deeply troubled at information about an imminent large-scale attack by Sudan's paramilitary forces in El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur. More and more people from Darfur are being pushed south, first to Chad in recent weeks and now to South Sudan. Talks between the warring parties resumed at the end of October. Previous attempts at mediation only resulted in brief truces, which were systematically violated. The UN's humanitarian response plan in August called for around $1 billion in funding, anticipating a number of 1.8 million refugees by the end of 2023. That plan has only received 38% of the funding required, while the needs are growing, said the UN official, noting that most refugees were going to the poorest parts of South Sudan and southern Chad, where local communities cannot absorb them.
Very disheartening indeed. Now in Mali, a few tents and just a few or enough possessions to survive is all that remains for the displaced people who fled the jihadist violence in the Talatea region of northeast Mali. They didn't leave us with any livestock or household goods. They even took our blankets, says Mohammed Al-Ghassan. In this camp adjacent to the town of Kidal, some displaced people have found refuge after a journey of several days on foot through the desert.
Daesh broke us. They didn't leave us any livestock or household goods. They even took our blankets. They took away everything that was essential to our lives, and they killed many people. We prefer our own place because we own and tend our livestock, and we have our whole lives there. As for this place, no one owns an animal or anything. We live solely on the mercy of God and the hospitality of the people of Kidal. UN soldiers Tuesday left a camp in the strategic town of Kidal in Mali's volatile north, which has been racked by jihadist and separatist violence, several sources in the peacekeeping mission report. We left Kidal this morning, a source in the UN peacekeeping mission based in the town said. Following a coup in 2020, Mali's new military rulers in June ordered the peacekeepers out, proclaiming the failure of their mission. So we've undertaken a number of actions to help them settle in, and we've done a lot of advocacy to get humanitarian actors to step in and help them. The United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali, MINUSMA, whose strength has hovered around 15,000 soldiers and police officers, has seen 180 of its members killed. The original plan was for the peacekeeping force to have withdrawn from the West African nation by the end of the year, but the UN troops began withdrawing from their compounds as early as July. The UN peacekeeping force says it has had to destroy or decommission equipment such as vehicles, ammunition and generators that it was unable to take away in accordance with the UN rule. The MINUSMA withdrawal has exacerbated rivalries between armed groups present in the north of the country and the Malian state. These groups do not want the UN camps handed back to the Malian army, saying such a move would contravene ceasefire and peace deals struck with Bamako in 2014 and 15. However, the army is pushing to take back control of the evacuated camps. The predominantly Tuareg separatist groups who oppose the army have resumed hostilities against it. The Al-Qaeda-linked support group for Islam and Muslims, GSIM, has also stepped up attacks against the military. That means that MINUSMA's pull-out is all the more perilous, taking place against the background of this renewal of hostilities and on what are perceived to be restrictions imposed by the authorities on its ability to maneuver.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, blue helmets from the new Springbok operation are in position after UN peacekeepers announced a joint operation with the National Army designed to stop M23 rebels from capturing key eastern cities. If the government tells us to leave, we will leave, but for the moment, we are shoulder to shoulder to ensure the security of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, says Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Biabiato, MONUSCO's military spokesperson.
Nous sommes ici pour l'opération Springbok.
We are here for Operation Springbok. We have several defensive positions, including this one that we are showing you. There is a lot more than just this position. The positions have been set up to support the Congolese army in the potential advance of the M23. UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo announced a joint operation with the National Army Friday designed to stop M23 rebels from capturing key eastern cities. The announcement follows a surge in clashes with the M23 group since last month, which has forced 200,000 people from their homes, according to the UN, after a period of relative calm. It also comes after the Congolese government requested the departure of the unpopular UN peacekeeping force known as MONUSCO. Addressing reporters in the eastern city of Goma, MONUSCO Force Commander General Otavio Rodriguez de Miranda Filho said the recent escalation was highly concerning. A new joint military operation with the Congolese army, dubbed Springbok, will aim to protect Goma and the nearby town of Sake, Miranda Filho explained.
I have a full commitment with the protection of the citizens from DRC and all soldiers that are deployed here. They are here outside our bases because they are ready to die, if necessary, to protect the population from this country.
Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Biabato Reyemamu, another force commander, echoed the same intention to protect citizens with their life. As the force commander said, we cannot leave the people of Goma and all the Congolese in particular in a situation of insecurity. We are going to provide security right up to the last minute before we leave. If the government tells us to leave, we will leave, but for the moment we are shoulder to shoulder to ensure the security of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. We cannot abandon them. The conflict represents a major threat to humanitarian access and to displaced persons, many of whom are sheltering in sites on the outskirts of Goma, he said. The M23 is now advancing southwards toward Sake, the force commander also said. A Tutsi-led group, the M23 has captured swaths of territory in eastern DRC since launching an offensive in late 2021, displacing over 1 million people. The United States and several other Western states have concluded that Rwanda backs the M23, although Kigali denies the claim. MONUSCO is one of the world's largest and most costly UN peacekeeping missions with an annual budget of around $1 billion. Peacekeepers have been present in DRC since 1999, but militia violence has nonetheless continued to plague the East. The current 14,000-strong peacekeeping force is deeply unpopular due to perceptions that it is ineffective. The Congolese government has requested MONUSCO's accelerated departure from December.
And finally, after a jihadist attack on rice fields in Nigeria's northeast Borno state, residents held a funeral under armed guards for the farmers killed in the assault. Suspected Boko Haram jihadists stormed rice fields in the Zabamori district outside the regional capital, Maiduguri, late on Sunday, seizing farmers and slitting their throats while abducting others, sources told reporters. Farmers are often targeted by Islamist militants waging a 14-year-old in Nigeria's northeast, where 40,000 people have been killed and more than 2 million displaced since 2009.
Jihadists have killed at least 11 farmers and several others are missing after an attack on rice fields in Nigeria's northeast Borno state, anti-jihadist militia residents said. Farmers are often targeted by Islamist militants, waging a 14-year conflict in Nigeria's northeast, where 40,000 people have been killed and more than 2 million displaced since 2009. Indeed, we felt awful and we absolutely condemned this, and it really pains me beyond my imagination, but we cannot do anything about it so far since it is beyond our capacity. 11 people were found and one among them was from Dusman village nearby, and we spoke on the phone. It was confirmed to me that 2 were also taken to hospital. Suspected Boko Haram jihadists stormed rice fields in Zamari district outside the regional capital Maiduguri late on Sunday, seizing farmers and slitting their throats while abducting others, the sources told our reporter. The farmers were staying in their fields overnight in Kakut village to guard their harvested paddy against theft before transporting it home the following morning. 4 more farmers survived the attack with slashes on their throats and were taken to hospital in Maiduguri, said Umar Ari, a second militia leader. The bodies of the 11 farmers were taken to the central mosque in Zabamari for a funeral, resident Bello Muhammad said. Boko Haram and rival IS-linked Islamic State West African province have increasingly targeted farmers, loggers, herders, and fishermen, accusing them of spying and passing information to the military and militia fighting them. In 2020, Boko Haram killed 76 farmers from Zabamari in nearby Koshobe village, a massacre that set a new standard of brutality. Attacks from militants in Nigeria's northeast have eased since the height of the conflict, when fighters held towns and large swathes of territory, but they still raid rural areas, hit military bases and ambush convoys. The affected farmers are begging for peace. Now we only need peace and security, and we are still calling on the government to come to our aid. The farmers remain insecure because these people are still operating in the areas that surround our farms.
And that's all the international news we had for you this afternoon. We'll be back again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thank you for watching and do have yourselves a splendid afternoon.